Okay, welcome into KC Sports Tonight, Thursday edition. Lots to look forward to this weekend, given everything happens with the snow going on. But Gabe, let's start with today's big news. Kind of a two-pronger here, but one, Bill Self is doing okay. He said he feels a lot better. He's good to go to coach on Saturday in the Sunflower Showdown after being sent to the hospital earlier this week with a bit of a health scare. He said it was AFib and ended up being really dehydrated, got some fluids, and feels better. Darryn Peterson sprained his ankle. He called it, Bill Self called it, a pretty severe sprain, and is questionable for Saturday. Couldn't really pick up based on what Self was saying, kind of which way it was leaning. I think hopeful he'll play. But another injury for a guy who's played just 10 of 19 games this season. Obviously, the hamstring was the issue prior to this. How do you feel about this news, given it felt like we got a bit of a break of talking about Darryn Peterson injury news, but another kind of bombshell today?
I think that it's such a bummer because he's been so good when he's played. But at the same time, I think that Tuesday night, if you were up well past or near the midnight hour for that game against Colorado, anybody who's questioning, I guess, his willingness to play and play through things
which was for some reason a conversation.
I think that there was so much confusion over all of the previous injuries. This happens, and it's such an obvious, you can point to when it happened, what it looked like, and the pain that he was going through. And when he checked out of the game, was like, oh, he's probably done for the night. There's no reason for him to push himself on an ankle sprain. He did. Luckily for KU, Flory and Melvin Council had great nights, and they were able to carry them down the stretch. Darryn hit the banked-in three to kind of cap things, but he was not moving around well, and you could tell that even the broadcast, Fran Fraschilla and John Sciambi were mentioning he's grimacing like every time up the court and kind of just running to the jogging to the corner and letting Council and Badunga run high ball screen and just like, oh, if they throw me the ball, they throw me the ball. Now, I would say that's a positive from the previous editions of when he's dealt with injuries where he's just gone to the bench, and even the threat of him standing in the corner is better than the threat of Elmarco Jackson standing in the corner. Now, I think we've seen enough from KU throughout this season of they look solid even if Darryn is not out there. Like, the group of that team, when they know that he's not playing, has the answers. They can be a tougher team defensively. They can kind of grind things out, and Melvin Council has been really good when it's just him and not Darryn. So if he doesn't play on Saturday, I don't think it's the end of the world for KU. I think the snow and all of that is probably going to make it tougher for K-State fans to get out to Manhattan if they're coming from the Kansas City Metro. The ticket prices I know are going down a bunch. So all of that factoring in, and that KU doesn't have a weekday game next week that they would have, that would then be 10 days off before the BYU game next Saturday. I almost lean on the side of, like, just let him not play against K-State. I know it's a rivalry game, and, like, as much as a guy is coming in for 1 year and whatever, you don't know if he wants to play or not. I almost just lean to, you can go beat K-State without Darryn Peterson and hopefully get him back for the BYU game, because I know everybody wants to see him and AJ DeBanza play against each other.
Yeah. No, you make a great point about the kind of mini-bye equivalent next week. Also, K-State is 1-5, which we'll get into kind of the X's and O's of the Sunflower Showdown in just a minute here. But, okay, on to the Self news. Huge scare this week. I'm sure most people know about it. If you don't, Bill Self, as I mentioned at the top of the show, taken to the hospital Monday afternoon. He said yesterday he was experiencing kind of like abnormal chest issues, is I think the verbiage used to describe it. And given his health history, he's had a couple of stays at the hospital, had stents placed last summer, something you don't mess around with, sought help, went to LMH, and found out he was severely dehydrated. He also has AFib, which I know a lot of folks listening to the show might experience that or have a loved one who experiences that. So Combined with the health scare he had, plus getting on an airplane and then being at altitude, they decided the best move was for him to not go. Gabe, I also thought it was interesting. He was asked about not having Jeremy Case serve as head coach against Colorado and instead going with Jacques Vaughn. And Jeremy Case's title is associate head coach, while Jacques Vaughn is an assistant. But he said, look, this is a 2-hour window. Which of these guys has more head coaching experience in signal calling and like on the sideline in 2 hours? And that's Jacques Vaughn. Hence,
multiple years at the NBA.
Sure, hence the decision to go that way. Other than that, anything you took away from the Self press conference today? I know it was highly anticipated.
Yeah.
First time we heard from him since this.
When we discussed this on Tuesday, Mark and I were talking about the level of transparency that Bill Self was going to have just out of the fact that this is the third time that we have had a public scare, I guess, over what his health status is, and just that the questions and the concerns about what the future of this program looks like, the harsh reality is it's a cutthroat business, and other teams are going to be able to point to KU and point to Bill Self and say, like, hey, do you want to go play for a guy who might just not be able to be available for all of these games? And so I was curious to see how he would handle it. I think he was very upfront with it. He came out and said this last night during his Hawk Talk show of like what happened, and said, I'm glad to know that it was what it was. I think that there's a little bit of a like, it's not, the health issues are not funny, but the fact that his two things that we've heard last summer and then today, or today this week, were like, my doctor said that I need to eat better. My doctor said that lifestyle changes could, like, such a simple and obvious thing, and he like jokes and laughs about it. And then today he was, and this week he's talked about how I was super dehydrated, and it's like super basic things, but just the reality of the reminder of a guy who's so hyper competitive and so singularly focused on all of these other people. Like, hey, you need to remember to take care of yourself a little bit too. I think that is slightly encouraging in a situation that is so scary for most people when you hear Bill Self hospitalized.
Yeah, I know your fear, especially with the stents being placed this summer, and his absence in 2023 from the postseason due to, I think, heart issues as well. So, yeah, he led his press conference with a laugh, which is always, I think, very on character and appreciated. And a couple days later, he'll be coaching on the sidelines of a historic rivalry game in Manhattan on the road. By the way, KU did say, we'll move on to the Sunflower Showdown now, kind of big picture. They are leaving like a little bit early to try to beat the storm. He kind of joked and said this morning, I'm not a meteorologist, but from my phone, I'm guessing we're going to leave at this time. I know a lot of people online were asking, like, are they even going to get there? Is the game going to happen? Because they are busing. And the answer is yes. They have obviously planned for that. Okay. Shifting over a little bit to K-State, a little bit more of this rivalry game. Believe it or not, K-State has won the Sunflower Showdown in Manhattan for the last 3 seasons, which is kind of surprising when you compare the teams side by side over the last couple of years. They're 1-5 this season. K-State picked up their first conference win earlier this week against a Utah team that was 1-4 at the time. Now they're 1-5. So it's not like they upset BYU, but alas, a win nonetheless. They were the last team in the Big 12 to be defeated, I suppose, looking for their first win. But they've won their last 3 years in Manhattan, and they have PJ Haggerty on the court. Gabe, just big picture thoughts on the matchup.
It is the one K-State beating KU in Manhattan every year of the Jerome Tang era.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Is the one thing aside from the Elite Eight run that K-State fans look on fondly of the Jerome Tang era so far of K-State basketball. And this one, last year's was pretty shocking because it was a very, very bad K-State team. but it was the worst KU team in the Bill Self era.
Yeah.
And it was kind of in the portion of the season in which KU was starting to have their struggles and their, I guess, the alarm bells were starting to go off that the transfer portal additions that they made didn't fix the foundational roster issues that they had the same issue with the year prior. This year's K-State team is borderline as bad, but I think that you have different top end talent. Haggerty is one of the best scorers in the country, and the way that K-State plays currently, the higher pace, if they're making threes, you can certainly. Weirder things have happened than K-State playing well at Bramlage Coliseum for a game against KU. So it's not going to surprise anybody. But going back to the Darryn Peterson conversation, I almost feel like if KU goes in and they just know going into things, Darren's not going to be out there. I think Bill Self can go to the guys and say, hey, we need to be the junkyard dog version of this team, and we need to play tough, and we need to this is going to be more of a defensive grinded out battle. Whereas I think if Darryn is out there, and I don't know what Bill Self said he wouldn't be 100%. If they try to get into a shootout with a K-State team that doesn't mind playing at that pace and was kind of okay with playing at that pace against Utah, that to me would be more of the recipe. Whereas if they can just kind of grind things out, and the interior of K-State is probably their weakest part of their roster. Several of those guys have either been injured or unavailable, or I would just say that they lacked talent in that area with the way that they built the roster. To me, it feels like it's a really big Flory and Bryson Tiller game if KU does what they're supposed to do. But they don't always do what they're supposed to do when they go to Manhattan.
Yeah.
As evidenced by, I would say, the last 2 seasons.
Yeah. I cannot believe. I mean, last year's, we could backstep, but last year's KU roster was so talented on paper and just did not gel on the court together at all. While this year's team, you bring in new talent, but it's interesting just how, you have almost an entirely new slate, and they've seemingly clicked. The week before the Colorado game, Iowa State and Baylor, they looked great. I was at the Iowa State game, and I was like, I texted Mark, and I'm like, a picture of the scoreboard, and I go, what is happening? It was, I went with my dad, and we were like, well, maybe it'll be a blowout, but we'll just go watch. And it was a blowout, but not for the reasons we expected.
Yeah.
But that was the first sign this season that showed me, okay, the capability I thought this KU team had is real. It's just, when can they pull it out? So, bit of a step back against Colorado. But, Gabe, I don't know if you listened to the Bill Self presser in entirety. It was pretty long today. But towards the middle, he talked about how they were kind of lacking some energy, and he talked about the altitude. Did you get that part a little bit? I was sitting there, shaking my head. So, Colorado, I played at Colorado twice in my career. I played basketball at Wyoming. Wyoming is the highest Division I elevation school in the country at 7,220 feet. Boulder is at 5,400 feet. So whenever we'd go play a non-conference game at Colorado,
you felt great.
There would be signs, which we had those two, that said, welcome to 7,220, how's your oxygen, in all the visitor tunnels. And there'd be signs that said, welcome to 5,400 feet. We're like, great, there's air down here, we can breathe. But all that to say, it's not a drug. It sucks the air out of your lungs. If I run 100 yards, you'll be in Kansas, you would be kind of winded. You do that in Laramie, and you're like, I can't breathe. There's no breath anywhere. There's no oxygen. And then you go down to sea level, and you're like, I'm the most in shape person in the world. So that is a real concern when he addressed that today as to why KU was out to kind of a slow start. But.
And they were doing it with they've really tightened the rotation. The bench is
6.5
almost
kinda.
Entirely Jamari McDowell and Elmarco Jackson.
Yeah.
And at the most extreme, if they really need it, if the bigs get into foul trouble and Bia comes off the bench, but that's break glass in case of an emergency. That's one of the things that I was most worried about if you were watching with a KU rooting interest on Tuesday night was how would they deal with the altitude. I actually thought that they did solidly, and I think comparing it to this weekend, of like the talent that they're going up with, I actually think that Colorado, you can argue, aside from PJ Haggerty, Colorado's roster is more talented / fits together better than K-State's does. So I know that the atmosphere, assuming that the weather is not so bad that people just can't get there at all, I know that the atmosphere will be tougher for KU to deal with than the one in Boulder with the fan base support. But I think from a standpoint of which team is actually better, Colorado was better than K-State. So ultimately that's not going to mean anything. We'll see how Saturday goes.
Yeah, and then another big one on Sunday, the women's basketball edition of the Sunflower Showdown in Lawrence. Kind of two underperforming teams. K-State is 4-3 in Big 12 play right now, so that's fine. I think they're middle of the pack. Kansas is 2-6, despite having 2 5-star local talents, recruits, I suppose, on their roster in Samaya Nichols and Jalea. Samaya recently coming off of a really bad sprained ankle. I think she was wheelchaired
Yeah, she was wheelchaired off the court in Tempe.
Yeah. Then played the next week, but you can imagine she is also not 100%. So huge game on Sunday for both of these teams for the exact reason you talked about in Jerome Tang beating Kansas. It's like, okay, we can have an underperforming year, but you got to win the Sunflower Showdown, especially if you're Kansas. So we'll see how that goes. Also, the first time these teams have met in like 7 years without Aoka Lee on the court, so will be interesting to see that as well. But big weekend of hoops. Saturday is the men's version. Sunday is the women's version. And if you don't make it out there, I'd recommend watching them on TV because weather's going to be terrible.
It's going to be tough to get out there.
Yeah. Okay, moving on to the NFL coaching carousel. We got some more news today. The Ravens hiring Jesse Minter, Chargers defensive coordinator, as their next head coach. Gabe, you pointed this out, and I thought it was a great tidbit. Matt Nagy was requested to interview for 4 head coaching positions in the NFL. 2 of them are now filled.
Those are the 2 that we know that he interviewed for.
Yeah. 2 are now still open. The Raiders job and the Cardinals job. I don't know. Your recent thought, did you think he had a chance with the Ravens?
I didn't think he had any real chance with the Ravens because I thought that they would – it didn't make sense to me that they would go like completely out of nowhere. And I always just thought that Nagy was going to get the Titans job, and it seemed like he had it until Robert Saleh made like a last-ditch emotional pitch. And I honestly think that the Titans realized, their ownership group realized, maybe this is misinformed. I'm not a Tennessee Titans expert, but I think that they realized that they did not make the right decision in firing Mike Vrabel. And
you don't say. I think
that's.
I was expecting you to give way hotter of a take than you just did.
But what I'm saying of that is I think that they just wanted someone who is more similar to that than anything, and he certainly is compared to Nagy, who personality-wise is a little more even keel than Saleh, who's a pretty emotionally turned-up guy. But so Nagy is so similar to what they just had with Brian Callahan and how spectacularly that failed and how quickly it failed. It doesn't surprise me that they didn't go with him, I guess. I don't really know what the Raiders will do, but I don't see Nagy going there. And then who knows, the Cardinals? The Cardinals are a true wild card because are they going to keep Kyler Murray? Are they going to rebuild in a lot of different ways? All of that is to say that the Minter news of him taking the Ravens job, I think that's just good for the Chiefs because the Chargers unit defensively was one of the best in the league. And if they had kept the coaching staff in place of Jim Harbaugh, Jesse Minter, and then add Mike McDaniel as their OC, and he just had that hiring yesterday. That's one of the best coaching staffs, offensive and defensive schematics wise in the league. I mean, the Chargers never stay healthy, so you never really know that will do anything or not. But I think overall it's just a good thing that the Chiefs won't have to deal with Jesse Minter coaching a defense in their division twice a year.
Yeah, that's a great point. Okay, let's wrap it up with, speaking of the coaching carousel and coordinators and the Chiefs, Kansas City bringing in Eric Bieniemy, all but solidified, kind of just waiting for the formal Chiefs announcement, but we've seen Patrick Mahomes post on his Instagram story about EB, Travis Kelce talking about him on his podcast, Tyreek Hill tweeting today that Eric Bieniemy is coming to Kansas City, which was kind of an interesting...
He also tweeted Mike to L.A.
Oh,
because
did he?
Mike McDaniel was his head coach in Miami. He tweeted Mike to L.A., and then he tweeted EB to KC, and he just...
Maybe he just likes
I think Tyreek Hill just likes to troll online. So
yeah. Well, catches everyone's attention, literally every
It
single
does.
time. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Okay, speaking of which, I guess, is a good transition to Bieniemy, who, worked for Andy Reid for almost a decade, from 2013 to 2022, led this team to a Super Bowl, and was really, I don't know if you can tie it to all Eric Bieniemy. There's obviously a lot of moving pieces, but the last time this Chiefs offense was at its full form, kind of in the early Patrick Mahomes days, 2019 to 2022-ish, he was the head man in charge. So I'm just curious, Gabe, your thoughts on Kansas City going back tried and true, bringing in EB.
I'm not as positive about this as Mark and Katie were earlier this week when they were discussing it.
Sure.
I think that I can understand why they are doing this, and I can understand some of the pro arguments for it apparently they needed someone on the coaching staff who was not scared to yell at people. Now what that says about what the previous grouping of coaches were doing, you can infer or read between the lines, I guess. But to me, if I'm Eric Bieniemy, it's a no-brainer. You're going to make more money than you were making as a running backs coach. You're going to be back working with Patrick Mahomes. And things went so poorly for the Chiefs this last year that if things work out, people are going to say,
see,
man, Eric Bieniemy was the missing piece. They really had an EB-sized hole on their coaching staff. And if things don't go well and things don't change and the guy who no one believes ever calls the plays doesn't fix things, because Eric Bieniemy probably won't be calling the plays, it will be Andy Reid. Everybody knows this. Then guess what? People are going to blame Andy Reid. And so I think it's a perfect situation. If I'm Eric Bieniemy, it's a no-brainer to come back. The perception of the way that they went about the interview process, the idea that it was like 3 weeks, like a couple weeks ago, kind of determined and you're just waiting on it, that I don't know if it's good process to just assume that you want the guy who you've heard from previously. And I am a little skeptical that Eric Bieniemy in 1 year with Ben Johnson just like absorbed all of these ideas, and that Andy Reid is going to be like, give me the whole book on Ben Johnson and what he's doing and why we should do it like that. I don't really think that's the way it's going to go. So we'll see how it does. It would be hard for the Chiefs offense to be worse at running the football in terms of explosive plays than they were previously. The Bears running backs were good. Yeah. There's a pro.
Yeah.
I would argue they'll just get better at running the ball if they don't have
you cannot get much worse.
Older version of Kareem Hunt and a not very effective version of Isaiah Pacheco running the ball. So that could be personnel based.
Yeah.
There's pros and cons. Ultimately, to me, the most interesting part about all of this is that this is Andy Reid doubling down on himself. He's betting on himself because it's not some giant change schematically. There's not going to be something massively changing unless he initiates it himself. He's not bringing in someone who has new lingo or new crazy new ideas, something that he's never heard of before, like a Cliff Kingsbury or a Mike McDaniel. So if things go poorly again and it's 4 straight years of average statistical output, or if they go poorly and they lose a bunch like they did this season, he's kind of signing his own failure certificate, to put it nicely. Yeah. And if things go well, then everybody can say, man, they just really missed Eric Bieniemy. Yeah. But Eric Bieniemy's not coming back to a Chiefs team that has prime Travis Kelce on it.
Yeah.
And we'll see. One of the pros, though, is it seems like Travis Kelce's coming back.
Yeah, that's a great...
And I don't think he would come back if they were bringing in some other noob.
Yeah, the New Heights podcast this week that kind of caught everyone's attention was when Kelce said, what was the language? It was like,
he said, I can't wait to see him back in the building.
Yeah.
And then Pat McAfee put that comment out and said, I'm thinking this is interesting. And then Adam Schefter retweeted it, which makes me think that it's not something insane to believe if those two people who are well-informed, McAfee knows Travis pretty well, and Adam Schefter is well-informed, usually.
There was a Kelce said something on his podcast a couple weeks ago, like the Chiefs. Do you remember this?
Yes,
I don't remember the context he said
it
that.
It was when Mahomes got hurt, and he said, hopefully the Chiefs can get him back as soon as possible.
And so that was like, well, he's done.
So now he's going in the complete opposite direction.
Yeah, which could just be, I mean, we never know. But certainly sounded encouraging, saying, I can't wait to see him back. And you and I talked about this off camera. He didn't say, I can't wait to see him back with the Chiefs next season or back next season.
Or
he said,
coach
in
on
the
building,
somewhere where players are. So, yeah, a little nugget to cling on to as we await Kelce's formal decision to hang it up or go back for year 14. Contract is up in March. We are out of time here on KC Sports Tonight. That'll do it for us today, but we'll see you back here same time, same place tomorrow.